right, let's have a quick tangent before we start today's very questionable game review. Is it me, or is there something very, very specific about this animation that makes it look incredibly, incredibly choppy? What weighs a game down? Questionable choices, odd soundtracks, or genuinely mediocre bosses? Good after evening, my name is Scarlett, and if you've watched my Sonic Mania review, you would know this was next in line. Mr. Supposed Mania 2 over here, trying to tempt us with a new Sonic 2D game after 8 years of Mania. With a weird set of questionable design choices that makes me think, who is this game really made for? Sonic Superstars released to very odd reviews, pretty much a mixed bag, straight off the press, Factory Zone. I thought I'd offer my 2 cents on an already questionable game. Sonic Superstars is a typical momentum-based platformer where Sonic and the gang travel to the North Star Islands, and that's about as much story as you're going to get. There are a few little snippets of scenes here and there, but they only really give you very, very tiny glimpses into like any form of a story here, which still doesn't really mean much, because like at the end of the day it's a 2D Sonic game. Like, you get very little bits of story and you kind of piece it together. This game makes things very confusing for that, so at the end of the day we're still very much left in the dark. This game is more about Dr. Robotnik searching for a dragon-like entity, as it is shown in the beginning cutscene to the story mode. But again, you really will end up having no idea what's actually going on. How do I put this? The game is very, very disjointed in how it functions. Most of the levels are quite enjoyable. Some of them are just fine. I really, really enjoy the Fantasy Zone level. I have not played Fantasy Zone in a while. I honestly quite miss it. I wish they would make another one, but realistically they won't. The game doesn't have many glitches that I'm aware of, but there are some that I know a lot of people have been able to figure out before. You know, the etc, being able to clip in the walls out of bounds and stuff. Although there is some really weird ones where the music will just stop for no apparent reason. Case in point, literally quite after I get out of a special stage. I have never in my life wanted to just want to hear something, regardless if it's a crappy Genesis font sound, just something. I do not want to be left alone with my thoughts. Most of the level designs in this game are great. Some of them are honestly quite cramped, which does actually make it really hard for me to figure out where I'm going, which, trust me, becomes a much bigger annoyance in very, very long stages. I'm looking at you, Egg Fortress, you can go to hell. Same with Press Factory. I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was, but I was not prepared for how annoying it is. The momentum in this game actually works quite well, surprisingly. You know, when you hear a lot of buzz about this game, you'd ought to assume that the game is the equivalent of Satan, because it doesn't apparently work well. No, the momentum's quite alright, not the same as Mania and not the same as Classics, but it's much better than Generations did for Classic Sonic, which that kind of just depends on your own preferences. Like, the momentum is decent. Nothing is honestly more fun than trying to rush through a level like, let's say, Bridge Island Zone, and just going full speed, not stopping whatsoever. Like, as weird as it is, it's very... I don't know, I like the momentum is what I'm saying. What's up with Bridge Island Zone anyways? Like, it's a very weird name, even for the beginning of a Sonic level, because quite frankly, like, the majority of Sonic games always have a starting level that normally begins with, you know, hill, or something really stupid. I don't know, I've only ever played a few. I joke, I've played the majority of Sonic games, and most of them have the, like, suffix hill in them. This feels more like a reference to Bridge Island, not Bridge Island, just Bridge Zone from 8-bit Sonic 1, which I feel like is nothing but pure speculation. I'd like to imagine that's what they're referencing, but realistically they're not, and it's just a weird coincidence that 2 levels happen to have the name Bridge in them. Right, let's quickly talk about the soundtrack, because the soundtrack to this game is really weird. It's very disjointed. I really don't get what's up with this soundtrack. The first 6 zones have really decent music, and I actually decide to have them on my Spotify playlist. Mind you, that's not an achievement or anything, but it's still just really, really odd. The last 5 go for the weird Genesis Mega Drive sound font, which isn't inherently a bad thing. It's just, how much do you have to be reminded of Sonic 4 to realise that maybe the Sonic 4 soundtrack wasn't good because of, like, the Mega Drive sound font? Like, you're already doing another 2D Sonic game, but this isn't, like, another pixel art game. Like, it's a completely separate 2D game, and you still want to go with the Genesis sound font? That just feels really weird. I'm more surprised they didn't just do a full-on new, like, font soundtrack, which they did with the first 6 zones, but, you know, you give and you take, etc, etc. Either way, the soundtrack leaves a lot to be desired, but is fine for the most part. Some personal favourites, of course, being Sky Temple, Pinball Carnival, and both Lagoon City tracks. That's not including the Amy Act. Right, let's finally talk the bosses. You've most likely heard this to death, especially from everyone else. They're not great. And trust me, that's coming from self-proclaimed Mr. Sonic 4. While I feel like the bosses could be interesting, they fall flat with gimmicks as the game is technically a multiplayer game. Think of something similar to New Super Mario Bros. Or Mario Wonder. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, by any means, but when the game, to some extent, is still restrictive on what you can do, even in multiplayer, it's still a Sonic game at heart, which, you know, will not go well for the majority of other players. It kind of ruins the experience a lot, because, again, like New Super Mario Bros., it does the thing where if you're off-screen for too long, everyone else kind of just gets put into a bubble. So unless you're planning to do like a fresh playthrough, like you haven't played it before, and you're playing with friends and want to get them into the game, you're only going to be able to really do it if you're playing slow as a collective group, rather than a full-on just rush. The wait time on some of these bosses, which I want to say some, but it's the majority, they take forever. And this really, really does not help the game's case when the bosses sometimes take as long as the levels, but at the same time, like, the levels themselves, and I mean like a lot of single act ones, especially when you get towards the later half of the game, the level times are getting ridiculous, where you're going to be spending like 2-3 minutes on the boss and you're still spending like a good 7 minutes exploring. Honestly, just at the end of the day, don't even get me started on like the final Robotnik fight or even the final Fang fight, because really all it does is piss me off, because there is no reason, mind you, a boss should have an insta-kill move regardless of if you have like health, rings, etc. Because like all it does is punish the player, and reading like these bosses is not necessarily hard, but they're really annoying to deal with, and not even in a fun way. Right, to finish this off, Sonic Superstars is honestly a really good game. It has a very rough exterior, which does not really help the game's case. The music is quite decent at its best, mind you, at its best, and it's only tolerable at its worst. The levels are mostly fun, but have really annoying bosses, which, again, does not help the game's case. If you wish to try something new and maybe get someone into Sonic, as well as through co-op, please just wait for a sale. The game is significantly higher priced than most Sonic games, and it's not to say like the game wouldn't be worth the money, it's just the principle of the thing. I'm pretty sure they were charging like 50, 60 on release date. And it wasn't too long after like Mario Wonder as well, and it also depends on like how you feel about Mario Wonder. But these two games don't really, you know, clash well, is what I'm trying to say here. Don't shove this game off because of its reputation, because quite frankly, it's a really decent game. It's the bosses that make it a problem, which even then can be a really massive deal breaker, especially for some. Honestly, like I said, just wait for a sale. That's the best thing you're going to get out of this game, to be honest with you. Like, yes, I have to record the bloody video separately and record this over it. I am not good at recording, so yeah, that's just a really awkward thing I have to do. Anyway, thank you for sitting through my very questionable review of a game which will release whenever it feels like it, because it's just time. Time is a really weird concept for me. My name is Scarlett, and thank you for sticking around.